Hey, good Tuesday morning, and thanks for checking out your latest long-range forecast. Michael Clark here with BAM Weather. We've got the latest outlook here over the next few days, out through the next few months. I've got some new preliminary summer research I want to share with you today as it pertains to the evolution from a really strong El Niño to potentially a very strong La Niña by as early as July. And I think that's going to be pretty significant to the overall weather pattern and how we're going to manage things going forward. So I want to get right into it. I've got a lot to discuss today. Share this with a friend, post it to your page, whatever you want to do. We'd love for you to share it out there. This is a look at the winter 24 recap. All right. Again, really kind of looking at the warmest winter to date across much of the north central Midwest, north central plains, Great Lakes, and the north and east. All right. You could call it a top 5, top 6 in the Northeast, warmest ever you can see here across the Midwest. It's been wet across the East and the Northeast. It was wet for a time earlier on, but it has since turned drier in the Central Plains. And we're going to talk more about that here in just a second. Before I get too far into that, I want to continue to update you here on South America. This is a forecast update here from Kirk Hens, who looks over our South American forecast information. He says the forecast ahead continues to evolve as anticipated, with hot and dry conditions expected to persist for central Brazil, impacting the big safrinha corn crop. And on the other extreme, excessively wet conditions are expected for southern Brazil, Uruguay, northeast Argentina, similar to how we started the South American season for both areas. Our top analogs that support, throw top in there, our top analog years that support this pattern, as it looks of right now, you can see we've plotted, looks like 2016, 1990, but as well as 04, 05, and 07. And these are all really years where we've transitioned into some La Nina behavior as well, but you can kind of see the glaring issues there that are going to continue to go on across South America. Okay, here's a look. I'm going to go to the next slide. I'm going to look at precipitation here just over the last 30 days. You can see just how wet it's gotten across the deep south and up across the east and northeast, but there has really been a lack of precipitation here across the central U.S., and you can see just in terms of precipitation, presence of normal, where the dryness has been really focused. It has not been that wet, despite what you might maybe have heard from some folks. This just hasn't been a very wet pattern thus far, especially here across the central U.S. Again, wetter here. This may change a little bit. I think it can get a lot wetter out through here and possibly get a little bit drier in through here. Again, we'll touch on that as we get further into this. When you look at the drought monitor update, you can see just how dry it still is in Iowa, portions of eastern Nebraska, Minnesota, Wisconsin. Actually concerning. The dryness has expanded here over the last 4 weeks. It's gotten wetter down to the south, but has not gotten wetter where it needs to be across the central U.S. for the most part. We look at rainfall the next 10 days, really. There is a chance of some rain here coming across the central U.S., Nebraska, Iowa, Illinois. The system coming here later this week. Half-inch of rain not out of the question. You can see the epicenter of where rain is focused, though, down to the deep south. There's no question about it. The next 2 weeks, again, maybe some at to slightly above normal precip here week 1. Week 2, we are at to below normal precipitation here as a bigger shot of cooler air, not Arctic air by any means, but colder air for March standards works into week 2. My question that I have is how cold can it get? Week 1 on the left, cold front would come in. The week 2 data, I believe, is a little bit too cold. What I did is I looked at the NAFIS, which is the North American Ensemble Forecast System, and its probabilistic forecast for below normal temps is not high. In fact, it's got a 50 to 60% chance of temperatures being above normal. I think there's a cold front in there, but I think the warmth out ahead of the front and the rebounding warmth after the front could mute out this blast of cold. Until this map starts to turn pretty blue, I'm questionable on that. Now, I will show you the European on the left, GFS on the right. They're both cold in their outlooks. And so they're, colder, if you will. There is a potential that for 2 to 3 days, there's a pretty big shot of cooler air, but I think a quick rebound is in the making here with that. Okay, MJO is going to drive a lot of the pattern. All right, most of the data looks like this as we go beyond these next 2 weeks, especially getting into MJO 5, 6, 7, and 8. You can see what these do here. They are wet until you get into 8, and they become progressively warmer. All right, whenever you're starting to get this warmth in the east like this and the cooler temperatures west, you're going to set up that battleground for precipitation. You're going to get pretty active in that regard. All right, and so that's why in our 16 to 30 day outlook, we think that portions of the Central Plains and deep south can become pretty active to much above normal in precipitation department. And the below normal precip is possibly going to set up further north and east across the Great Lakes and the northern plains. The risk to this particular outlook right now, if there was one, that is it can be possibly wetter in here, okay? And it can be possibly warmer through here, okay? That's the forecast confidence. So again, a warmer risk here and a wetter risk here, not out of the question in that 16 to 30 day period, but that's kind of the general takeaway right now in the outlook. With this though, with the MJO going through where it is, where we've been and going into 4, 5, 6, and 7, the severe weather frequency will probably uptick quite a bit, especially with the falling angular momentum and the pattern that we're just seeing in the North Pacific. We're potentially seeing more ridginess set up in the east and northeast with a trough underneath, which would indicate severe weather can be more frequent than normal, especially in this area that we highlighted, which is kind of why it could be drier here, where that ridge sets up. So we're going to have to really watch that. I do think an uptick in severe weather the first, I'd say the first week or two of April is not out of the question. Going farther into April, looking at that outlook, I'll move this up here. We show the CFS V2 monthly because it's really done a great job. That's not a popular message. People get up in arms when you talk about the CFS. But look at its latest forecast for April. Look at the dryness here, all right, and the wetness back out across the Central Plains. Okay, I don't disagree with that whatsoever. A little bit warmer east and a little bit cooler to the west. Again, I just don't have a big reason to disagree with that. So our official April forecast product right now, if anything, could be a little bit warmer further east. But regardless, it's normal to above normal temperatures for most of the growing regions. Probably drier east and wetter west is the idea right now, or the thought process for the April forecast. Here's the risk to the April forecast for precip. Could it be a little bit wetter, a little bit further into here? It could be. Depends on where the ridge sets up, the high pressure, and these troughs, kind of where they swing through. Where's that battleground set up for precipitation? All right. So something to keep in mind there. Now, beyond April, I do want to share with you the latest seasonal signals, the latest seasonal forecast signals from the European seasonal and all the NMME, or all the multi-model ensembles. Big cooling ongoing in ENSO right now. It is cooling off dramatically. We're continuing to see the subsurface cool. The temperatures dropping. These are dropping significantly each week. And the models are rapidly heading towards, especially the global multi-model ensemble, a La Niña, a moderate La Niña by June, and perhaps a strong La Niña by July and August. The European has trended substantially cooler the last 3 months and quicker with a transition from El Niño to La Niña. And you can see that here, that the majority of its ensembles do have, or at least a large cluster of them have a La Niña by August. But 2 months ago, it was up here. And then the last forecast, it was like this. And now this forecast, you can see what it's doing. The trend is clear. It's trending cooler and cooler as time goes on. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, I have a slide I want to share with you on the seasonal signals. What I looked at is the ONI, or years where we came from a very strong El Nino and we went into a moderate to strong La Nina for the summer months. Years where that happened was 98, 2010, and 16 was close. We didn't go into a moderate La Nina in 16, all right? But we did come off of a strong El Nino, okay? And so I factored that in for just most recent behavior. But the years, especially 10, 98, 10, and 16, you see we start in around the 2, we get down to around the minus 1.5, and that's what these years did. Those years, June, July, August, they were very warm down here across the south, and the Corn Belt was warm in general. But we had this ridging going on. I'll change the color so you can see what I'm talking about. And what happened is you have this flow up and around and over the top of the ridge that brings in a lot of precipitation. And you can see these years are excessively wet. These stronger Niña years are very wet, and they're a little bit warmer than average. That's very interesting, okay? 16 being the most recent, I think might have the best weight for an analog for summer. All right, it was warm, and again, it was very wet. I think in the form of thunderstorm clusters and potentially severe weather is not out of the question in that regard. So, you know, looking at this, looking at the idea, it's a warm, with our research, it's a warm and wet summer, possibly in the form of storm clusters, severe weather, and a lot of rain as well. So something to keep in mind. One other thing I want to share with you is in these years where we have these strong El Niños going into the strong Niñas, especially years like 98, 97, 98, 99, 2000. These are all above trend yields for corn. And we also did this in 07, 2010. 2010 was a big above trend yield. Or I'm sorry, not 2010. 2009 there was a big above trend yield. But these are some of the years where we have these stronger La Niñas. All right, where these stronger La Niñas are kind of telling us that we have, coming off of the strong El Niños to the La Niñas, are telling us that those can be good years for the crop. So interesting research nonetheless, and something to keep an eye on is that 7 of the last Niñas produce an above trend crop, and furthermore, the stronger Niñas tend to produce bigger crops. Interestingly enough. So we will keep you posted on that and keep watching this very carefully. Obviously, an outlier to that research would be 10, as it is slightly below trend. But these other years, especially 98, 99, 2000, and then you have years like 05, 06, 07, that were, again, above trend. We haven't been above trend yield in quite some time. In fact, this graphic here states in the last 5 years, including 2023, the corn yield has fallen below trend each year by an average of 6 bushels, or 3.5%. I wanted to explain that, and I think the reasoning for that is how dry it's been in Minnesota and Iowa the last 5 years. This is just the last 5 years outcome in terms of precip. It's been very dry here. This is where the most corn is grown in the U.S. And so if we have a year where all of a sudden we went from that to this, that would be pretty different. Okay, and we've got some dry conditions to erase in eastern Nebraska, Iowa, and Minnesota right now. We need to see it turn around there. So this is something to watch. This is the thought process, is starting dry but turning wetter might be the story. That's all I have for today. Again, share it with a friend. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. Thanks for checking out our video. We'll talk to you soon.